This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com with a massive Wrestling Observer review. It's one of the biggest updates I've seen in recent memory. And of course, a big part of it had to do with something I've already talked about, which was Vince McMahon's April 21st response to Janelle Grant's lawsuit against him. He denies any sexual abuse, saying it's pure fiction, and disputes a lot of claims about their relationship and what she alleged about her life. The main thing is the non-disclosure agreement signed between Vince McMahon and Janelle Grant would not have allowed such a lawsuit to be filed. The lawsuit actually violates the settlement agreement. So, and if there was any dispute with the settlement agreement, it would have had to be disputed in arbitration, not by a new lawsuit. So a lot of legal stuff, in my experience, has to do with following like the proper office procedures. So we'll see how this plays out. McMahon says the terms of the agreement, his attorney says the terms of the agreement should remain in place. They acknowledge that the first $1 million payment was made in 2022 when the agreement was signed. However, because the plaintiff, Janelle Grant, talked about like she violated the non-disclosure agreement, that's why he never made further payments. He says it was a consensual relationship and he never mistreated her. He points to the letter, the love letter from Grant to McMahon that was reported in the New York Post, which was actually written after her claims in the lawsuit, is an indication that Grant's claims are fictitious. Because at the time she wrote the letter, she was 42 years old and she had a law degree. And apparently her boyfriend at the time also was a lawyer, which, by the way, she was apparently cheating on him. And she, like, they're basically claiming she would have known, like, writing such a letter would not be good for a case if she was forced, as she claimed, which is still I don't get how you could be forced to write a love letter. They also claimed that Grant saying she was struggling financially after years of taking care of her parents. I'll just point out one thing. I actually looked up the building that they lived in. This is the building that they lived in. Both Vince McMahon and Janelle Grant lived in this building. I don't think anyone struggling financially is going to live in this building. Um, and that's called the Park Tower Apartments in Stamford, Connecticut. It's a luxury multi-million dollar building. She lived there with her fiance attorney, Brian Jencalves, which I'm pronouncing wrong, sorry. He's currently the senior vice president and chief privacy officer of Televisa Univision. And they only lived 4 floors below Vince McMahon. So in apartment buildings, which, for instance, I lived in a luxury apartment building a couple years ago, as you guys might remember, on the wire. The higher up you are in these buildings, the more expensive uh, the places are. For instance, in that building I was in, which again, this is Canada and it's friggin' Ottawa. The highest was like 7 or 8 thousand a month to rent, uh, and the lowest would have been considerably lower, maybe 3 or 4 thousand a month to rent. So if Vince was in the penthouse and they were 4 floors below the penthouse, Would have been pretty damn expensive to live there. McMahon claims that Grant would often visit McMahon at weird hours and then return back to her boyfriend the same night. Sometimes she'd show up at 2:30 a.m. to pursue their affair, basically saying that her allegations are false. They go on to say that her boyfriend was on the board of directors of this luxury building, and at no time did any building security, police, or friends of Grant or any lawyers at Grant contact Vince about the claim. And again, like to me, if this horrible stuff is happening, and again, I hope this goes to court to see. I don't know if it happened or not, but this went on for like 3 years, and she had a law degree, and her boyfriend. She accepted gifts the entire time too, and initially agreed to a $3 million settlement, from what I understand. But because she didn't keep her mouth shut, she only ended up getting 1 million of it. And it's fine if she wants to talk about it, but if you want to talk about it, take the lawsuit all the way so you can talk about it and don't settle it, or just go to the police. That's just my opinion on it. I don't know who this has not been decided in court. We don't know what happened. I hope it goes to court or arbitration. I think it will at this point because McMahon has nothing to lose by going there. They claim that Grant, when they broke up, initially wanted McMahon to stay in the building, but McMahon didn't and moved out. When McMahon learned that she had violated her non-disclosure, that's when he stopped making the payments. Technically, she has to also pay him back the money she has for violating the disclosure. Apparently, she lived from '99 to 2002 in LA and did some acting. She is in the 2006 movie The Theory of Everything as a hospital receptionist. I'm still waiting for someone to post a picture of that. She was also an equestrian rider and owned horses. So an equestrian rider that owns horses, and I'm not saying. I mean, this definitely. How can you be destitute and own horses? I mean, this is not. I know people that do riding, and it's Brutus Beefcake's daughter, for instance, at one time rode horses, and he was telling me about the ridiculous costs, stable costs of it, which are huge. That's not a hobby of someone that's destitute. Well, Grant's lawsuit indicating McMahon hired her only because they were having an affair, which may or may not be true. I mean, there's no doubt that friends always get hired in companies, or I think it's called nepotism. Friends, relatives, all this definitely have a better chance. But he's claiming that he gave her the job because she had a law degree, and her job was a legal administrative coordinator in the legal department. Um, Apparently, the agreement also said, and this is common in legal agreements that I've seen, that you can't make disparaging remarks about the person publicly or to third parties or on social media after you sign a non-disclosure agreement. That's the whole point of taking a payment for a non-disclosure agreement. So that definitely is a violation. Um, they also claimed that as far as her claims of taking care of her parents, the father had been dead since 2017. They started their relationship in 2019, and the mother had been dead some time before the father died. And apparently the father was in a retirement home not being taken care of by her. So the the narrative that this is this poor person down on her luck that was taking care of her parents that recently died and was desperate for a job may not be true because clearly she lived in a luxury apartment building with a guy that was a great job, rich, and was on the board of the building, and her parents had been dead for years. And apparently she wasn't actually taking like living with them according to this. So Vince is 78 right now. The key to the lawsuit, according to Meltzer, will be to prove the key points wrong. I do think he is going to take this to court. I don't think he's a multi-billionaire. So even if he were to lose in court, which they're like I don't know what the hell will happen in court. Be interesting to see the evidence that would come up, but like it's going to be an amount of money that's going to be pennies to him anyways if he loses. There's no criminal charges. And what would be the point of settling this when she's already come out and blasted him and told all the dirty details of the situation? Like, usually a settlement is to keep that kind of stuff under wraps and protect your reputation. So I could 100% see him taking this to court. In other WWE news, 6 cuts were made and from the main roster, or 5 cuts from the main roster, 1 from NXT were made last Friday. Interesting to see if more are made today. Uh, they were mostly Indian wrestlers that weren't being used. Xia Li from China, Zion Quinn from Australia, Von Wagner, who was apparently on the main roster, but they never used him. Cameron Grimes. They all have no 90-day no compete clauses that would expire in late July. The most famous was Jinder Mahal, who had a long WWE career, spanned over about 15 years. The others were basically not used much. Apparently, all these cuts were Paul Levesque decisions. We know Paul Levesque, although I've seen Jinder sucking up to Paul Levesque in many interviews. A great politician, of course. You don't have a 15-year career in WWE without being a good politician. But I mean, we saw that Triple H beat Jinder Mahal in India, which killed his push and killed and like say what you want, it killed him in the market. There was never a show as big in India after. Um, so obviously Levesque was probably never that big of a fan of Mahal, who I think McMahon was responsible for his push. And also Seth Rollins got a serious injury that required surgery in a match with Mahal, which is not going to help your standings with the company. Meltzer brings up that one good point about India is now the WWE is going to be on Netflix in India. They're not going to continue their Indian TV deals. AEW could technically pick up those TV deals. So Mahal does have a chance of signing with AEW, despite his Twitter war with Tony Khan. TKO announced that Ari Emanuel in 2023, the CEO of TKO, made 911 million in salary, 24 million in bonuses, and was awarded 40 million in TKO stock. This is a guy that's making a friggin' massive amount of money. Chief Operating Officer Mark Shapiro, total compensation was 16 million. Strangely enough, Backlash May the 4th in Lyon, France. I really want to go to France someday, by the way. The food and the beautiful women there. I'll definitely go. Anyway, sorry. I was just watching a documentary on Jim Morrison, who passed away in France, and it just looks like such a cool place to visit. Anyways, SmackDown in Lyon, France, the night before Backlash, not sold out, but 12,341 tickets out. Backlash the next night, 12,621 tickets out. You would think that since this is to my knowledge, the first ever American TV tapings from France, that they would be sold out already. But I guess Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles and Damian Priest against Jey Uso aren't that hot a ticket. Obviously, everyone knows Rhodes is not going to lose that. And I don't know how many people care about the third world title. Is there maybe someone can answer me this in the comments? Is there Roman Reigns had two world titles, right? The Raw and the SmackDown. Now that Rhodes is champion, I've only seen him with one belt. So does that mean they've unified that belt? Is there only two world titles? Because they also say Damian Priest is the world champion. So is there one or two, or is there two or three world champions? It's so confusing. In my opinion, there really should only be one world champion. Like, it's confusing, it waters it down like crazy. And a world, what, are we gonna have two Olympic champions now? Are we gonna have two world champions in amateur wrestling? How does that even make sense? And I mean, there's already a million leagues with a million world championships, so why, like, at least limit it for one world champion to each league, because it just gets really confusing to someone like me. Cody Rhodes is going to be in the remake of Naked Gun featuring Pamela Anderson, who is another person that overcame Hep C and got cleared. I still haven't seen the first Naked Gun. It's not really my style of movie. The best Leslie Nielsen role I ever saw him in was in, I think it was Creep Show, where it was like a horror style movie. But I'm not really a fan of today's horror movies, but those old school ones I really like. Particular, I think '80s was the best horror movie era. Seth Rollins, speaking of Jinder Mahal match where he got injured, underwent surgery April 16th to repair a torn meniscus. I could almost guarantee you this had something to do with Mahal's release. Lynch brought it up. No idea how long Rollins will be out of action for. Apparently, both Lynch and Rollins contracts expire within the next 2 months. Technically, AEW could make them an offer that they can't refuse. I honestly think Lynch would make more of a difference, particularly since she's women's champion now, but obviously making her women's champion would give you the idea that they probably don't think she's going anywhere. Dwayne Johnson has started voiceover work for Mona 2 and is in a training camp to play Mark Kerr in the Smashing Machine. If you don't know who Mark Kerr is, he's actually a friend of mine. There's a bunch of interviews. If you search Mark Kerr, the Hannibal TV, I really like Mark Kerr. I know he's going to be a creative consultant on that movie, and I hope the last I heard, like the last interview I did with him, I believe he was working as like a car salesman. So I'm really happy he's getting this movie and like a second chance at fame because he has overcome his demons and he's a really good down to earth guy, very positive guy. Jesse Ventura, who's now 72, says he's currently in talks with WWE. Apparently, he had a falling out with Vince McMahon because he wanted to run for president a while ago and promote it on WWE programming, and Vince McMahon was totally against it. May have had to do with the Vince McMahon connection to Trump. Who knows? As far as Finn Balor, he recently re-signed with the company Sonya Deville is expected back soon after knee surgery. They, for some reason, in last week's Wrestling Observer, it must have been a typo. It said there was no house shows, but there was. So if I reported that, that's what I read in the Observer. But it seems like there was a UK tour and a US tour last week. The UK tour was a lot more successful than the US. Birmingham, they had 11,000. Cardiff, Wales only had 4,984. That's the same place where they ran the stadium a few years ago. London at the O2 Arena, 16,410. Belfast, 7,500. Then back on the US side, they were in Erie, Pennsylvania, 4,251. Fort Wayne, Indiana, 5,638. SmackDown last Friday in Pittsburgh drew 12,787. The TV tapings are doing really good numbers. Raw in Columbus, 9,385. Apparently, they are saying, although the TV shows are not going to really change too much from PG, that they are considering it the end of the PG era with The Rock's recent swearing and promos and stuff in the blood. To me, um, the swearing is like it really doesn't make it. The swearing to me and The Rock's swearing and stuff. I mean, that really didn't add much to the shows. The Cody Rhodes blood thing was a good idea, I think. But I think just the less cartoonish characters like that woman. I think she's still under contract, that superhero woman. That was a horrible, horrible gimmick. By the way, I think I saw Karrion Cross and his group are appeared in NXT last week. Never seems to be a good sign when you're called down to NXT, but with the new people running it, new people running WWE, who knows? There may be more crossover, and it might be less. For instance, like Jinder Mahal was appearing in NXT recently, and then he ends up fired within a year. Apparently, Baron Corbin might be brought back to the main roster, but he was in NXT, and he's pretty much he went from being pushed as like a close to top guy to being jobbed out to going to NXT. They may be giving him another chance, may not, but a lot of people, once they're demoted, seem to disappear. But Karrion Cross is, I really like him as a person. AEW news, the Rampage tapings in Peoria, Illinois, where I think that's where Tony Khan grew up. Had about 3,000 fans, 3,047. Their Dynasty pay-per-view had between 100 and 108,000 pay-per-view buys. 6,619 fans. They were in a 10,000 seat arena, but that's a good number for AEW. It was the setup they had was for 7,000 fans. So they had a lot of seats blocked off. Dynamite and Ring of Honor tapings in Jacksonville this week where Tony Khan did the injury angle. Free military tickets for military personnel ended up with 2,177 fans. Apparently local media was on at him about saying the free military tickets was an excuse to have seat fillers, but I'm never going to complain about giving the military free tickets, as I've already said. As far as the neck brace angle and beating that Tony Khan took, which let's be honest here, it didn't look that intense, but I can see why he did it because he's wearing this neck brace for the NFL draft, and NFL Films is doing a documentary on him. So it brings some attention that, hey, why is he wearing a neck brace? Let's look it up on AEW. But apparently, Pat McAfee, who works for WWE and has an agreement with WWE, was taking shots at Tony Khan because I guess he's wearing the neck brace, but walking or other than wearing the neck brace, he's moving around just normal. He's not. Pat McAfee's basically saying, other than wearing the neck brace, he's not selling it like he's really hurt. So it's more of a joke. He said, quote, someone should tell Tony Khan that if you have a neck brace on, don't effing move around like nothing's wrong. Stick to the gimmick and look straight ahead like your neck's broken, end quote. Apparently, Colt Cabana, it's unknown if he's still with AEW or not because he kind of disappeared once CM Punk appeared in the company. Apparently, he was a producer but not being used. It's still being paid. Uh, his status seems to be unknown right now. One of the lost AEW employee. There's so many people in AEW. I mean, I've heard, and it's good for the wrestlers as they're getting money. I wish I could get money for doing nothing. But like, I still work a regular job, and I work on YouTube as well, and I work very hard. So I wish I could have one of these friggin' AEW contracts where you're paid. I think the minimum is like $150,000 American for doing nothing. But definitely CM Punk is one of these lost guys. I mean, we hear that Jake the Snake was just re-signed, and strangely enough, most of the time that we see the Murder Hawk whatever Lance Archer wrestling lately, including the recent event I attended in Ottawa, Jake is just not managing him. So it's like they re-signed the guy, and it's like just a favor to give him money, which is great. I'm glad Jake is getting that. But it's like I think Vince Russo said it, Tony Khan collects wrestlers. It's like, let's just throw all these guys under contract and do nothing with them. More is not better. More is not better. It's better to like have like the best of the best and use them. Like, and I'm not saying Jake is a bad signing. If Jake had actually appeared with Lance Cade, for instance, or Lance Archer at that Ottawa collision that I attended, he would have got probably the biggest pop of the night. So it's like, why do you have these guys under contract? Legends that are, and especially when there was so many nobodies on that Ottawa show, like just a retarded amount of nobodies. And you have people like is Ric Flair still under contract? And I'll just bring this up one more time. Here's the poster for the AEW in Ottawa. I took this picture. This is one of the problems I have with AEW. Okay, I took this picture in the arena. These are the posters that were in the arena that night. John Moxley was not there. Chris Jericho was not there. FTR was not there. Kenny Omega was not there. Um, the woman there, I forget her name in the black and white. I never saw her wrestle. So unless I fell asleep, she was not there. Why does nobody give AEW shit that they advertise people that aren't there? Chris Jericho is right in the middle of the freaking poster. He was not at the show. That's false freaking advertising. I mean, that's one of, and they're paying these guys, right? So for instance, you have all these stars. Why the hell was the show filled with Ring of Honor nobodies? I mean, this is why their shows are dropping, not only because the shows are 5 hours long, but they're advertising all these stars, and then you show up to the show and these people aren't there. Okay, so let's look at some of their upcoming numbers. Dynamite coming up in Winnipeg, the hometown of Chris Jericho, 3,600 pre-sold. Dynamite in Edmonton, I think this might be AEW's debut in Edmonton. Don't quote me on that. I don't know. big wrestling city. I mentioned recently in one of my book entries, I wrestled there in front of 14,000 on SmackDown. They got 3,400 pre-sold. Vancouver, I think, might be the best wrestling city in Canada right now. They recently sold out a WWE taping and they got 5,288 tickets out for Collision. When's the last time you saw over 5,000 tickets out for a Collision? Vancouver, I believe, is the best wrestling city in Canada. Dynamite in Bakersfield, only 1,400 tickets out. Collision in Las Vegas, only 1,800 tickets out. Dynamite at the Forum in Los Angeles, 3,900 tickets out. And that's LA, a major market. Remember the first time they went there, they had like 11,000 fans. Collision in Palm Desert, California, 1,452 tickets out. Dynamite in Loveland, Colorado, 1,849 tickets out. So a lot of pre-sales under 2,000. Vancouver, man, that's a wrestling town. In other news, New Japan Pro Wrestling is acquiring Stardom, which I guess they already had some type of affiliation. TNA had its Rebellion pay-per-view in Las Vegas. Apparently only about 500 pay-per-view buys. Big news out of that. Matt Hardy and Sami Callihan returned, although apparently neither of them signed a contract. Mike Santana from AEW, one of the guys that wasn't being used much in AEW, has returned to TNA. I believe he signed a contract. Apparently they did pay-per-view there and a taping, and they were heavily papered at the Palms Hotel. And one thing you can do in Vegas for anyone that goes to Vegas is they paper a lot of shows there. There's actually booths you can go to get free tickets all over Vegas because it's such a tourist town. So they ended up with 1,150 for the pay-per-view and 876 for the TV taping. But again, heavily papered. Las Vegas is an easy town to paper. The Billy Corgan reality show is not going to be on the CW network as he originally claimed he was going to have two television shows on a national network. It's only on the CW app. As I've said before, since they switched to the CW app, we're acting like that's a good thing. You hear nothing about NWA anymore. Nothing. I mean, this is the biggest news I've heard from the NWA since they moved to the app is Billy Corgan's network is also Billy Corgan's reality show is also going to be on the app. It's going to be called Adventures in Carneyland. In MMA news, the PFL show in Chicago with an NBA lead-in only did a 0.15 rating. Jake Paul claimed he has a $10 million offer to fight both Nate Diaz and George Masvidal. I don't even see anyone wanting to see Jake Paul against Nate Diaz. Maybe I'm wrong. Him against George Masvidal would be a way bigger draw. Everybody knows that the Diaz brothers, like they're pretty beat up right now. Like they've been out of UFC long enough that their names aren't as strong. Where Masvidal is pretty fresh out and he's famous. Like he's way more famous. Meltzer brings up here that they did do a show April 19th at the Wintrust Arena in Chicago and drew far less than New Japan at the same show. They did not release a number, but I think New Japan drew around 5 to 6,000. So let's give a guess that it was around 3,000 for the PFL. Cain Velasquez attempted murder trial takes place September 9th. UFC 303, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. There's tickets, like normal tickets that are $12,000. VIP tickets are even higher. They're There are super rich people that can afford that. UFC 304 in Manchester, England, July 27th, will feature interim heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall versus Leon Edwards. Or sorry, Tom Aspinall will defend his heavyweight title, and Leon Edwards will defend his welterweight title. They were not going to fight each other. Um, John Jones, I believe, is the heavyweight champion, but we don't like the last we heard about Jones, he was having issues getting getting tested. So, but UFC is clearly doing great despite Conor McGregor being their most known star, and there not being really anyone close, any new up and coming stars close to the level of McGregor, but they're obviously drawing really well. Alfred likes hearing the wrestling news. I don't think the love letter was dated wrong. She what Vince McMahon is saying is she wrote the love letter after these accusations supposedly happened, not after she made the accusations public, but McMahon's lawyers are saying that all this stuff supposedly happened before she wrote the love letter. Young Macho Man, I seem to be like one of the people that, despite being known in wrestling and having by far the largest wrestling YouTube channel in Canada, and my matches on YouTube as both the Blood Hunter and Hannibal have far, far, far more hits than most independent wrestlers. I'm one of the ones that no one ever wants to give a chance to. Mortal says Vince McMahon is innocent. Alfred, what wrestler would I want to interview? Jesse the Body Ventura. Mean Murshizi best. I don't really understand the comment. Rollins, 2 worlds titles. Okay, so there's 2 world titles. The Universal title was retired when Cody won it. Thank you for clarifying that. Tessa Blanchard, I've asked her about interviews before. She doesn't seem interested. I know we would use her in Great North Wrestling. I know we would definitely use her in Great North Wrestling because I bought a lot of matches. I bought the rights to air a lot of her matches from PCW Ultra on this channel. If you search Tessa Blanchard, the Hannibal TV, you can see a ton of matches of hers, including versus Jordan Grace and Britt Baker and Chelsea Green, and they all did really well. So we would definitely have her in Great North Wrestling. Jack Kilby is who runs it, but we I I have told him he should book her, but um, who knows? Maybe if that happens, I would get an interview with her. Someone says Ronda Rousey believes that Vince is still running the WWE through Bruce Pritchard. Uh, I I don't think so. I think the first time he claimed he was retired, yes, 100%, but not now. Not now because it's totally new owners now. Um, and I like Bruce, but I do believe Vince Russo that eventually, and it's not going to happen all at once, the whole old regime is going to be gone. I truly believe that because when new people come in, they like to put in new regimes. I don't think it's going to be overnight or too obvious, but I think slowly more and more people from the old regime will go. Someone believes I think Janelle Grant is a fraud. Someone says if it wasn't for Vince, wrestling would never be mainstream. That is true. And I do believe that that Vince will still try and start a company. I've heard Eric Bischoff and Conrad Thompson say there are companies that are secretly for sale now in wrestling. I don't know if he means TNA or what other companies he's talking about. Companies that could be bought. Um, but I think it would be better for Vince to start from scratch because nobody watches Access TV. I mean, some people surely do, but I mean, I wouldn't see the benefit of buying a company like TNA. I would definitely think he'd be better starting from scratch, especially considering, I mean, I like a lot of the guys with TNA, but they don't have any like big stars or anything. And like, what's he gonna do? Buy MLW with who does MLW even have now? Because they've lost Jacob Fatu. He was their main star. Alex Hammerstone was another star that they had. He's now in TNA. I guess they got Davey Boy Smith Jr., who's a good friend of mine and stuff. But I'm pretty sure Vince could recruit him once his contract expires. Someone says he used to set up rings for Billy Corgan. Cool. Someone also says the Diaz brothers are washed up. I would not. I mean, if you're paying the Diaz brothers 10 million for a fight, that's a waste of money. I wouldn't even like if I was George Masvidal and I saw Jake Paul saying that he's putting up the same for the Diaz brothers as him, I would say if any of either of the brothers are worth 10 million, then Masvidal should say, well, I'm at least 20. Because I would say Masvidal is way, way, way more popular than either of the Diaz brothers at this point in time. AEW shows have been so dead, their product is the shits. It's just these horrible decisions, like you're paying over 4 million for Sasha Banks, and then they keep putting her on the mic when she's not even good on the mic. And I've heard Eric Bischoff say recently she has the gimmick of being the CEO, yet Tony Khan just did an angle where he's the CEO getting beat up. So how do you have two CEOs in the company? And just keeping on I mean, they just signed a bunch more smaller wrestlers. It's like, why do you keep signing all these small wrestlers? You've got more than enough small wrestlers. The small wrestlers that have little or no buzz about them. Why keep signing these people? Okay, Goldberg recently said he wouldn't go to AEW because it was too cheesy. I guess he was making like 2 million per match in Saudi Arabia with WWE. But there's like 40 wrestlers under AEW contract that are rarely used and not over. Why not just get rid of all those wrestlers and bring someone like Goldberg in who would make a difference, or at least give them a temporary boost in popularity? John, for John Jones getting tested, John, the issues getting tested. I don't the results of that test didn't come out, but there was a big fight that he had. Not physical fight, but like verbal fight with the drug testers that came to his house. And the cops got involved and stuff. Uh, you can go back and search that up. That was a few weeks ago. There are way too many titles today. Again, I saw last week AEW unified the six-man titles of Ring of Honor and AEW. Why do you need to, let's face it, Ring of Honor and AEW are the same company. Why did you need two six-man titles? Like I don't get that. But again, he's the son of a billionaire. He can do what he wants. I've just got although I like the people that they have on their roster, just the company gives me a headache. The only Cody Rhodes interactions I had was he was supposed to wrestle me back, I think, in 2019, in August 2019, in Hawkesbury, Ontario. There was the one and only event we ever booked on a Sunday, and that was specifically because Cody Rhodes was booked on the Friday and Saturday, and they said that he could only do it on the Sunday. And then he ended up getting his Arrow taping and had to back out. But especially with all the success he's had now, I'm disappointed that didn't happen. But I remember it was part of the deal for that show that he would not wrestle anyone for the title, so I had to drop the title that I had the show before. Or sorry, I couldn't win the title the show before. The title had to be vacated because PCO was also going to Ring of Honor at that time. I wrestled PCO the show before. He was going to Ring of Honor, so I was originally supposed to win the title. PCO had the Canadian title at that time. But then because I was going to wrestle Cody Rhodes on the next show, I couldn't win the title, so we had to do a vacated thing because he wouldn't wrestle anyone that had a title on the independents, and he wouldn't lose by count out, disqualification, or pin. So I was even going to agree to get beat by Cody Rhodes, and I did a promo for it. But then he ended up having to, and I don't blame him for this. He got an Arrow TV show job, so he couldn't do it. And then I had a lot of buzz back when he did the TBS title thing, Open Challenge. In AEW, I had Terry Funk, Jerry Jarrett, Conan, Jacques Rougeau, the Mountie, Bushwhacker Luke, all publicly say that he could wrestle me, and I had everyone on my channel pushing for it. But he said that he would not wrestle me. He said it in a Twitter post. He would not wrestle me because I had mentioned his dad in a promo. I didn't even do it in a derogatory way. Then, because at that time he was saying he would never wrestle off his dad's name. He wanted to make it on his own. Then he goes on to WWE and has a whole angle with The Rock based on his family. Anyways, I don't good for him. That's my only interactions with him. And I'm disappointed the match never happened. Really disappointed. Someone says McMahon's physical trainer feels that his loved ones betrayed Vince. Well, Vince, the game Triple H is called the game for a reason. He plays the game better than anyone. But I do agree with Vince Russo that Triple H will not last forever in WWE. Goldberg's retirement match. I think he will have a retirement match eventually. Someone does not like all the rules of UFC. I have like zero interest in UFC these days, other than seeing how much money they make. Tessa Blanchard has been in XPW wrestling for Rob Black. I did not even know that. Anyways, I would hope to see her in Great North Wrestling, honestly. I would. Mike Piper's come in to see me today. Would I ever be a manager? Yes, I would, for the right amount of money. Miranda Gordy interviewed Mike. I already interviewed her, and she's not a great interview. Already interviewed her. And on that note, please give this a thumbs up. Have a wonderful Friday.